I'm at REITWorld in Dallas, and joining me today is Ross Nussbaum, Managing Director and Senior REIT Analyst with UBS. Thanks for joining us today, Ross.
Thanks for having me.
Despite challenges in the economy, analysts seem to think that fundamentals in the REIT space are strong. Are you in that camp?
You know, I'm actually not. I think we've got a lot of problems out there. Europe is falling into recession. I do think that there is a slow, gradual recovery going on in the U.S. I think it's been complicated by what's been going on in Washington, D.C., but I wouldn't go as far as saying that it's a strong recovery. If there was one area where I would be tempted to use the word strong, it would be multifamily. Multifamily rent growth has been absolutely phenomenal over the last year, year and a half, and we do think it's going to continue into the next year.
In the near future, do you think growth will be driven more by acquisitions, or will that growth be driven by new development?
You know, again, I think it probably depends on what property types we're talking about. So it's a funny game of multifamily and everybody else. So in the multifamily sector, we are seeing the REITs being quite active on development. Doesn't mean they're not acquiring, but they are finally at the point where the fundamentals and the market rents do support new development, and we are now seeing that across the board. In the other property types, it's incredibly selective. There's not a single regional mall under construction in this country. There's barely any new shopping centers going up. I can't think off the top of my head of a new office tower that's really going up. So I think ultimately it's really going to be an acquisition game for the next, I'm going to say, at least 2 years. And then once the demand starts picking up, we'll start shifting into more of a development cycle. But for now, I think it's going to be acquisitions, and more acquisitions.
How about debt maturities? Given the significant debt maturities expected to occur in the near future, how do you think that'll impact REITs?
Mixed views on that. On the one hand, REITs might be opportunistic and be able to take advantage of distressed debt maturities. So they'll be hopefully acquiring properties at more attractive pricing. So you put that on the one hand. On the other hand, if we have continued distress in the world, if Europe falls into recession, if there's any form of contagion or weakness into the banking system, then you have to sit back and say, how aggressive are the REITs going to be in acquiring distressed properties, because they might be paying more attention to their own balance sheets again and getting more conservative. I don't think it's going to be anything like what we saw back in 2008 and 9. I don't think we're going to see massive waves of equity issuance. But I do think that some level of caution still needs to be had here with respect to how you deploy your capital, how you think about your debt maturities over the next couple of years.
In terms of raising capital, where do you see REITs having the most success in 2012, if at all?
I think it's going to be more of the same for what we saw in 2011. The equity markets are absolutely open, and I think that's a generally across the board statement. The unsecured markets have been tougher on the debt side. We've seen a couple REITs lately tap the unsecured market, which is a good sign, but spreads are still very wide for the weaker REIT credits. So the top-rated credits, great, they can tap it at good pricing. The weaker credits, they're still a little challenged there. So what do they then do if they can't do unsecured? They look at the bank term market. They look at insurance companies' secured mortgage debt. So I think there are other avenues out there other than unsecured. And then the CMBS market is really the final question mark, because it stumbled this summer. It's trying to claw back with some origination, but I would say the biggest unknown as we go into 2012 is, what is the CMBS market going to look like, and is that going to be our friend or our enemy?
Thanks so much for joining us, Ross.
Thanks again for having me.
I'm Carissa Chappelle for REIT.com.